Oh, thank you, Jordan Rudess. It's such an extraordinary honor to be with you today and to talk about your creative process. And with Jordan has been a band member of one of the most extraordinary progressive rock groups, Dream Theater, for many years, over 20 years, and has also been an important part of the rock group Liquid Tension Experiment, a super group that has brought together the talents from all corners of the rock world to blow people's minds. It's been an extraordinary body of work that all you master musicians have put out. On top of that, just individually, you've done amazing things. We're so fortunate that you could take a little time to be with us today. Thank you, Jordan.
Oh, you're so welcome. I've been looking forward to talking to you because I'm a big fan of your creative work as well. I love it. And you know that I get inspired by it and do all kinds of other visual additions. I hope you're okay with that.
Well, I have to tell you, it was really probably an important part of the success of a recent sale of blankets for that ayahuasca being. I think I owe you one. So I'd be glad to send you one, because your animation of it, I think, made people very excited about the image of ayahuasca visitation.
Well, yeah, but the funny thing to me is that when you create these beautiful things, I mean, in my mind, they're already moving. So I'm just kind of helping out a little bit, if you really wanted to make it move, I'm sure you could do that too. But I'm kind of like, well, let me try to show people what I'm really seeing in this, and so we take it, just to that.
Well, you're seeing the source more than the final object or artifact. You're seeing more the visionary world and trying to, by animating it, that's one of the things about the visionary worlds, that they're always moving and always morphing and always changing. And so your animations now, which is like, I guess, something new, or have you always been doing animation, Jordan?
I was never very good with like a pencil and paper and art in that way, but as soon as the whole multi-touch thing started to happen, like when I first touched like the first iPhone, I was very inspired by the idea of having this control on a screen of all my fingers kind of moving. And of course, the first thing that happened is it kind of triggered this rainbow of ideas in my mind about what could happen musically. Like all of a sudden, everything could move, very different than the idea of like a piano, which of course is a beautiful instrument, but you press key, it kind of sounds. But in this case, I could have this kind of physical control of everything. And then I soon discovered that not only was it musical, but it was also very visual. So I had actually released an iOS application called Morph, whiz back when the iPhone first came out. And a very funny and quick story is it's the same year that my wife and I bought this beautiful, you can't see it, but it's a 9-foot Steinway piano. So, but I had the first iPhone, and it didn't really make any great sounds then, and it didn't really have any great graphics on it either. But in my head, it did. So I was sitting around playing with it, making kind of like a sawtooth waveform sound, or something not that attractive. And my wife said to me, honey, what are you doing? We just bought this amazingly beautiful 9-foot piano. Why are you making that horrible sound? You should be in there playing the piano. I was like, no. I got an idea. I got something cooking. And that year I released Morph, whiz, which was this instrument that brought together audio and visual together. So as you moved on a note through this kind of playing surface, you also morphed these shapes. So
Wow.
it really kind of put the worlds together, and it was very successful. And it won the Billboard Music App Award that year, which kind of kicked off the opening for me to continue in that space. So,
Wow.
so ever since then, I've been really kind of discovering that, you know, how much joy I get in playing in the visual domain as well as the audio domain and putting them together. I'm really turned on by that connection. Like, I've always dreamed of a synthesizer that, in addition to programming the sounds, moving a filter or an oscillator or a waveform, when that happens, what happens visually? So that's something I'm always kind of pushing towards. Pressing.
Has that been happening in some of your stage shows and things?
Well, it happens a bit. I tend to influence what we put on our screen a lot. And over the years with Dream Theater, I've worked with different artists, and we've done things like we've taken parameters from my synthesizers and actually assigned them to visual concepts. So when I play, maybe the velocity that I'm playing, the speed of the notes, the particular chords will trigger different images on the screen. So I've played with that a bit. And actually, it's funny that good timing that we're talking, because my latest experiment is actually something I haven't put on the stage yet, but I'm going to, and that uses laser lights, but the laser hangs above my keyboard, and every time I play a note, the laser hits that key in perfect synchronization in different colors, and it's it's very, very trippy and very, very cool. It's like, you gotta see it. It's
Is
awesome.
it distracting to play, or?
Well, we just got it set up yesterday. I saw it. One of my friends, wrote to me, sent me a link. You got to check this out. You're going to love this. And I saw it. I was like, I love it. And I wrote to the guy. The company is called Wicked Lasers. They're awesome. It's a small box that is very powerful. I wrote to him. I told him that I really wanted to get involved with this because they had a guy working on like some kind of a keyboard layout for the lasers. I was like, well, I want to do that. So he was excited when he heard from me, and he said, I'm going to send you a box. So I actually got the laser. It was sitting in my house for like a month, but the guy was still finishing the software. And finally he wrote to me, said, I'm done with the software. I called my tech. My tech came over, and we just put it in place last night. I posted a little video of it on Instagram, a little teaser, and I was like, this is what we're doing. It's really, really cool. So things like that. I'm really, I get inspired when all of it comes together. It was a little tricky to play. The best thing is when the lights are out, So I'm sitting there in the darkness playing this keyboard, trying to play these arpeggios, hoping that I hit the right notes. But meanwhile, right or wrong, when I hit a note, it's just this really kind of like intense visual spark.
Exactly. Well, that's the synesthetic punch, that is very typical in the psychedelic experience, the kind of crossover of the senses,
Absolutely.
synesthesia. And so the whole thing of visual music and the idea that, of course, you've probably seen the cymatics experiments and things like that.
Yes.
And we've always dreamed of having them, mirror some kind of sounds that are being made by a band as they're, in live. I've never seen it actually happen yet, but it's a lot of the light shows now give a sense of that there's a crystallization of something visual at the same time that you're hearing the crescendos of sound. It's very powerful.
It is. Well, that's why a good lighting person, when you see a band, makes all the difference, because you can't separate. Most people, even if they don't have synesthesia, when the two come together, it becomes one, and it's just so much more powerful. Yeah, think about that all the time. The brain is easy to kind of control with visuals. You have a sound, like imagine going to like a piece of software and you interact with it, however you interact with it, but you let's say you put your finger down and it makes a great sound, okay? But then imagine if you put your finger down on it and there's a burst of color, as it happens, that emulate the harmonics that are tingling in the air, and all of a sudden you go, wow, that's amazing. So at first you might go, oh, that's a cool sound, that's good. But then if it has that extra visual, it's going to make all the difference. And some people don't even realize that. The interface, what is it? And it doesn't even have to be art. You know, it has to be, it's the idea of the way your brain absorbs the visual experience.
Absolutely. Well, have you been experimenting with the VR worlds and things like that? Because a thing in virtual space, to have it take on some gravity and some sense of presence and interactivity, like you're saying, that it makes a sound when you squeeze that object in the VR space. Does it make a cool sound? You know,
it's really, really important. Like, what is happening? How are you interacting? I mean, VR is really, really cool, and I've got my eyes on it. I've had all the different systems. I get a little bit of a closed-in feeling in VR. It doesn't, as cool as it is, every time I try it, I'm like, wow, this is awesome. But then I don't find myself wanting to go back to it all the time because I feel a little bit almost like a claustrophobic vibe about it. I don't know how it's gonna evolve and what we're gonna do about that, but there's that funny limitation.
I know. I've experienced the same, and the seemingly unlimited possibilities that are there too, as we have to evolve our virtual skills, I guess.
Yeah, totally.
In our current world. How are you guys doing and everything in our current strange environment?
Yeah. So from a personal perspective, I've been doing very well. Of course, there's been all the pressures that I need not explain to everybody. You know, we're all worried, and it's kind of a extra stress. But for myself, I mean, I travel so much. I spent so much of the last year on the road that when this whole COVID thing hit, being home, I was like, well, okay, for me, that's a really good thing. So I've been enjoying being home. I have my equipment here. I've got my beautiful piano. I've got everything I need to make music. And so that's been really great. And I've learned a lot of things also. I really embraced the whole streaming world. And when COVID hit, I was doing this thing where I went online and I played 60 days in a row. Just put my iPhone down on my piano and I just played just to send out some healing energies to everybody, to create some kind of a nice, loop, good vibes around the world, because, the Dream Theater fans are everywhere around this planet. So they would join in and I would feel it and I'd be like, okay, well, this is great. And I did that literally, I think more than 60 days, until finally I thought, you know what? I'm enjoying this. This is so beautiful for me, and I think that a lot of people are appreciating it. But the one thing that it's not good is that I continually give away music for free. And even though from one point of view it feels amazing and beautiful, it's not a great it's not a great thing to do, because there's so many musicians who need to make a living. I mean, anybody who's doing music professionally needs to make a living. And so I decided to kind of shift gears, and I slowly kind of educated the fans that I was going to move to a Patreon format, which is what I'm doing now, which is working out so beautifully because it gives me one focused way to interact with people. They want to message me, they can go to my Patreon, and I'm happy to message with them. I know the people that are part of the Patreon are very kind of really into it, and they're really dedicated, and they really want to be there, and it's, pretty serious thing because they're making a commitment, and I really like that. So, I mean, I still, like today, later on, I'll play a little bit online, but then I'm going to, after 10, 15 minutes, I'll say, okay, you know what, if you're enjoying this, please, come with me to the Patreon world and support me and support the other artists that are out there. We're all trying to, make music and make art, and we're all trying to just survive.
It's really true. I mean, you're helping us today. We haven't been asking any money either for our broadcasts and things like that, but we're set up as a church and I really, it's good to be making offerings to our community around the world, and we've been kind of stimulated to do that since we've been in sequestration. Something we'd always planned to do, but now it's been forced upon us that this is the only and the best way right now, and it's been a way to reach surprisingly much bigger audience, and given us the opportunity to perhaps reach out to some people that might never be coming to play at CoSM necessarily because they played at Coliseums and things like that.
Yeah,
but we could have a conversation, and and all of our community is, kind of considers creativity to be like their spiritual kind of practice in a way, and we like to think of art as a kind of overall spiritual path, even, that
absolutely
that is something that it might be outside of any ordained kind of
right,
path.
but those of us who live in the creative space know how healing that space is and how important it is to our balance. I mean, that's, of all the things I do musically, whether it's playing in my rock band or playing on my iPhones and making crazy sounds, the most important element to me is the healing energy, the healing power of music. I know that sounds very kind of new agey or whatever, but this is true. Like when I sit at the piano and I can find that space, that headspace where creativity is flowing through me and I can just let it out, that's so wonderful and feels so good to me. And when I know that there's people out there and I can maintain that space, even though maybe there's this other energy coming in, but when I can create that loop, I mean, there is nothing better than that. That is the reason to do this.
Now, I want to ask you whether you feel that there's a particular spiritual agency that you feel like you work with, or that you, I don't know, Untethered Angels was a pretty powerful song from that last album. Yeah. And I wonder how much you've thought about angels or spiritual helpers in some way.
I don't really subscribe to any particular religious idea. My religion, if I had to say one thing, is really the music and the creativity. That's where I find all the beauty and all the creative source and the power to connect. To me, it's pretty much, I am very one-sided in a way. Everything comes through me and it all kind of comes out with music. I don't have a lot of other things that I need to do. I like to, since I'm a human being, I do like to go for walks and kind of maintain some balance of the mind and body, especially these days as I get older. I find that I can't ignore the physical body as much, and I also find that connecting everything gets me to a higher state of being anyway. So it's all about how open can I become and what can I bring, how much creativity can I bring in. And as far as where it comes from or who I might be praying to, I feel like it's just this kind of, cosmic energy that's always there and available to all of us. It's just a question of how much of it can we let in and how much of it can we then allow ourselves to bring out.
When did you feel was it like when you were 9 or earlier than that you had that experience with the keyboard?
Yeah, I started very young. I always liked to play. And music when I was very young was a way for me to really express myself. A lot of times when I'm improvising, and people kind of look at me and I'm playing, and they're like, "What are you playing?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm just like what I played when we opened up. I don't know. It's like we're talking. We're just saying whatever words we decide to say at that moment." For me, music is like that, and I'm expressing my musical words at that moment. So there's always been that side of what I do, where even when I was very young, I would go to the piano, and if I had something to express, even if nobody else was around, I would be able to get it out and make music, and that's the way I felt, just better, that I was at least allowing this energy flow to come through me. smoothly, because it certainly wasn't going to come out in the words that I was saying. I needed this other part. But as I got older, I started to kind of connect with other things. I was very locked into the classical world. First of all, when I was young, I started at Juilliard when I was 9 years old. And I didn't really have much of a teenage rebellion. So when all the other kids were out partying and doing all that kind of stuff, I was practicing. Didn't know anything about it. Well, combination of things happened. One day, some high school friends arrived at my door with a mini Moog, and I had never seen anything like it. They kind of busted their way past my mom, who didn't really want them to come in with this foreign electronic object, and they brought it into my room, and I plugged in headphones, and I think I moved the filter knob, and right then I felt like the knob was like inside my forehead. I mean, I really, in a flash, I felt and recognized the difference between acoustic music and electronic music. It appealed to a whole different part of me. And so it was that and moving the pitch wheel and all of a sudden having control of pitch. Because, on a piano, you play a note, it's that note. There's nothing, I'm not going to be able to, I'm not going to bend it, I'm not going to do it. I play it, and it makes a very nice sound. If I want to do something with the frequencies, then I kind of have to, massage them, maybe add. But piano is nice because you're listening and responding. It rings, and then so that creates that. But the electronic instruments, it was this continuous idea where you could play a note, and your energy is controlling it all the time, whether you're turning a dial or you're moving the pitch. It's always in motion. So I went, wow, that's amazing. So that combined with the I had some friends of mine who were telling me, "Oh, Jordan, you gotta try acid." And I was like, "What is it?" I don't know anything about it. No, you gotta try. You're a creative person. You have to experience it. You're gonna love it. And I was just like, my world was so different. I was completely into the classical music headspace, although I was improvising, which the Juilliard people didn't like. But some friends of mine came around with this little blotter acid that had little pictures of frogs on it, and they didn't really tell me anything.
What year?
Oh, okay. So this had to be 74.
Okay.
Right. So they just gave me some of this frog stuff, and they didn't tell me anything about the dosage or anything like that. And they just told me to go and try. I was 18, almost 18.
Almost 18. All right.
Almost 18. I was going on 18. So they didn't tell me what was going to happen. They didn't give me any instructions. It was nothing. And I was with a friend of mine. So I decided, okay, today's the day I'm going to do it. All we knew collectively is that one person was going to do it. That was going to be me, and the other person was not going to do it. Just to, kind of keep an eye on what was going on. I think my friend, who was a little older, kind of had an idea that, okay, well, let's just make sure that somebody, is not going to be, grounded. So we're at his parents' house. He had his place upstairs, the third floor of the house. And I was downstairs, and I had taken a whole one of these little blotter things. And I was sitting at the piano. Literally, I was playing about this slow. I was probably going, and I'm just playing, All of a sudden, it was so amazing because as I was playing, I started to do this thing where I cross over my hand, and every time I did, the typical kind of acid trails you get, I had those, but forget that. They were all multicolored. There were these beautiful arcs and rainbows, and I got so high so quickly that I wasn't even in a space like going, oh my God, I'm incredibly high. I was in it. I was completely in the bubble of this new world, and it started with these amazing rainbows that were happening, and then I realized that I was actually not here. I was sitting over there, and I was watching myself play. And it was the first time in my life that I had a perspective of outside of myself enough to know that, oh my God, you play the piano really well. yeah, I got this perspective, and I was like, oh wow, listen to that, like what, check it out, just, and it was incredible. And then as I was going through this, all of a sudden I got this realization that, hey, I'm in my friend's house. His mother is in the kitchen over there, and I am incredibly high. So basically I came off of the piano, and I literally, I basically just crawled up to his apartment that he had upstairs, and I told him I'm like so high. And that whole thing was mind blowing. It opened up channels of my brain that were just like in amazement. It was incredible. And one of the not so great things that happened that day, because actually when I look back at it, it was in no way was it a bad psychedelic experience, but it had elements of being weird because it was so powerful. I found out later on that I had eaten a 4-way hit of blotter. So, as somebody who does everything in moderation, doing this powerful thing was like, wow. So my friend had an appointment that evening because he was like an assistant teacher up at Purchase College or something like that. So he was like, and I was like tripping my brains out. He was like, I have to go, and I guess you have to come with me because we have to go because I promised to help out with this play they're doing at Purchase. So I remember driving, and I was too high to really, all I could do was go. We were in the car, and I remember in the trees, I was just seeing all these shadows and these faces in the trees, and we're driving along. My eyes are, as big as saucers, and I'm just going, wow, what's going on? We got to the place, to the college, and I was in the lobby, and there was this most amazing phasing, flanging thing going on with everybody's voices that was extraordinary. It was like, it's kind of like if you've ever heard Hendrix, The Gods Made Love or something like that. It was just kind of trippy like that, where the sound was swishing and moving, and I was kind of like holding my friend's arm, just some grounded sense, and he's trying to make believe everything is normal, and I'm just standing there listening to this thing, this sound. But again, a little bit too high to be freaked out about it. So we walk into the play. And what is the play? I don't remember the name of it, but the play involved people who were like in an insane asylum, walking around in the crowd, in the jackets. They were literally like walking through the crowd, and I'm going to my friend, what's going on? What the hell what's happening? So it was a crazy day altogether. I remember I listened to Close to the Edge, and I was just like, it was, yes, it was an incredible sonic awakening, just connecting with music in that way. I've never, even though I've tripped hundreds of times, I've never gone back and been that, I would never necessarily want to, because that was a little bit too far away for me. But, that was the first one was the most powerful experience that really blew the doors open and opened up new channels. And then I've been kind of always interested in that, and I've been able to maintain and I think enjoy and even transmit some of the value of those experiences to other people. Well,
I'd say that the app that the whiz Morph kind of
Morph whiz.
Morph whiz. Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. It's all one.
Feels like it comes right out of that description of your opening visions on the piano. That the sound and the color mixed so beautifully that it was an entrancing, something to latch on to in the future,
Totally.
And I feel like, of course, the first journey, of course, was the most important to me as well. I think it saved me, and wow. Because I was in a more desperate, I think, kind of mind frame, and so it's definitely been important to me. But then after this experience you had, and you could tell that there was some effect on your music, and you also listen to The Art of Noise, it sounds like.
Yeah.
At that time, and you were contemplating digital and Moog and synthesizer kind of directions in your work.
Absolutely. For a while, when I left, finally what happened was that I continued on at Juilliard for a while. There was a lot of, typical kind of pressure from parents and teachers to keep on going. So I had that experience while I was still kind of on the classical path. But I've been going to Juilliard already since the age of 9, because they have a preparatory division where the younger people go, and I went like every Saturday, and then I'd have a lesson on Tuesday. And so finally, when I got to the college, I'd been going there for a long time, but I had to re-audition, and now I was in the college level. But at that point, I was already like, not sure about this. I want to, play the synthesizer, and I want to play this kind of space music and rock music. And so I ended up leaving. It was the day that I walked in, and my teacher said, I was playing a Chopin ballade, and I had studied it for 1 week, and I was up to page 25 or whatever, looking at the music and playing. She came over and took the book away, and I stopped, and she was like, well, why did you stop? I said, well, it's like a 40-page piece, and I didn't memorize it. She was like, well, when you study with Del Marcus, you have to memorize it in the first week. And I thought about the mini Moog, and I thought about my other interests, and all the things I wanted to do. I was like, you know what? I don't have time for this. I can't do what you're asking. So I ended up leaving. And then it took some years to try to understand how to take my classical background, which is very strong, very solid education and technique at playing the piano, and move it into the things that interested me. I really liked Genesis and Yes and King Crimson and Pink Floyd and all these groups. I thought they were awesome, but I also liked things like Tangerine Dream and Tonto's Expanding Headband, and I liked Morton Subotnick, weird synthesizer noises. And one of the things that I really loved to do, that I did a lot of when I left Juilliard, is we would do these late night space jams, where I would take my mini Moog and had a friend of mine build me a pedal that basically took it from below your hearing to above your hearing, and we played music with a lot of echo, and it was really our own kind of space music, where I used my technique on the mini Moog, but I pretty much had one hand always on the knobs, one hand always on the keys, and I would kind of morph through different worlds of sound. I'd hint at little melodies, that little gentle melodies, but then bending the pitch and go into some ring modulation I found some old tapes recently which were kind of interesting on an old 4-track that I had. So at some point I've got to allow this
you've got to dig it out, because that'd be amazing to hear the early and the transitional kind of stuff from, because it's more like the Picasso kind of trajectory that I see. You were a master, as a teenager. You had already been classically deeply trained, and then decided to, instead of go the traditional route, go the much more unknown path.
Absolutely, I did, and it was for me, I was just in it. So I was just doing my life. I was opening with the way that I felt like I needed to. For the people around me, they were like, "What are you doing? What's happening?" And granted, it was a little confusing, because at Juilliard I was told that I shouldn't really associate with people who weren't like classical musicians, because they were like beneath me or whatever. But of course that's not real, but that's kind of like the way that I was brought up. So it took a while to kind of take everything that I had done and everything that I had learned and merge it into something that would become my next kind of like solid reality. But I've always been interested in all different kinds of music. I still love making space music. I made an album with a good friend of mine about a year and a half ago called Intersonic. It was very, very spacey and very, very cool. Some of it is me playing like piano against some synthesizer textures that he did on his modular synthesizer. But other times I'm on a keyboard and I'm doing some very spacey, cool sonic things. And it's more of that part of what I love to do. I actually had a friend of mine who is no longer on this planet. His name is Richard Lanehart, who was an electronic music guru of sorts. And strangely enough, the forces of the universe just landed him on the house next door to me. I was living here. I've been living in my house for 20 some odd years, but at some point he moved in, and he was just an incredible human being, like a real technical guru and electronic musician. And he and I would come together and also do some of this music, and that was really, wonderful as well.
Did you record it?
There's some stuff. I have some. There's a DVD of us doing one of our concerts that we put out. And I have some copies in my closet,
That's so nice.
Pretty special.
Well, a lot of your albums have had are live, and they show the mastery of each of your talents to summon, like a symphony, a final and complete performance in within a show, which is there are those masterful recordings of say Beethoven's Ninth or something like that by great directors and things like that,
right,
and they have the cough and the applause of the different movements and things, but the typically live stuff from bands oftentimes is a sad drop in the actual because of the manipulation of today's After Effects, if you were.
Right.
But the demonstration of the skill and the how did you guys find each other? Because it seems like you match in some way.
Yeah, we're moving on to Dream Theater, I take it.
Yeah, I was just wondering
cool.
about
let's
that.
do it.
But there's a serious period between. Maybe we should go there first.
Well, I don't mind skipping around a little bit. Because it's kind of an important thing to bring out when we talk about my unusual path. That when I did leave the classical world, I spent some years where it was unsure, playing in cover bands. I was playing space music, doing whatever it took to keep myself creatively happy and surviving and everything like that. But to skip forward. One day some friend of mine walked in the house and said, "Jordan, you got to listen to these guys named Dream Theater because I think you'd really be interested in them." And I remember he played for me. I think it was a song called "Take the Time" off of Images and Words. Because Dream Theater had that album and one before that not too many people know about, "When Day and Dream Unite," in the early days. So I heard that and I was like, wow. And it really impressed me because these guys had chops. They really had very structured technique on their instrument, and they were blending in the progressive world with the metal world. And I had never heard that combination of prog and metal and those kind of chops. And I was like, wow, I didn't really know rock musicians could have that, could do that. So I was really interested in that, and I had arranged soon after that an opening came for me to go and meet them and to audition for them. And actually, what happened was I auditioned for them, and we all got along great. I turned them onto one of my pieces. I learned some of their stuff. We hit it off really well because there was definitely some like-mindedness there, But what happened back then is at first I didn't join that group. I didn't join Dream Theater. I did one show with them at what's called the Foundations Forum, which was a big Los Angeles music festival that they had that they needed help for. So I did that, but then I joined the Dixie Dregs with Steve Morris and those guys. I don't know if you're familiar with the Dixie Dregs, but Steve Morris is now the guitarist in Deep Purple, and the Dregs were, if you don't know them, you got to check them out because they were an amazing instrumental fusion-y prog band, really incredible. And I knew their stuff, and I wanted to do that instead for a lot of reasons. But then later on, so what happened was, even though I didn't join Dream Theater, I got a call not that long after that to say, Jordan, my name is whatever this manager's name was. I'm representing Mike Portnoy, and he would like you to join a supergroup, right? So, and that turned into the Liquid Tension experiment. So it was with Mike Portnoy and it's with Tony Levin, the world's most amazing bass player, and it ended up, although it wasn't originally supposed to be with him, it ended up being with John Petrucci, who is the guitarist with Dream Theater. So I had done, while the guys were doing the Dream Theater stuff, I had done 2 side projects for them, 2 kind of big projects for me, and they were very successful rock instrumental albums. So after we completed the second one, I remember they came and they broached me about the idea of, well, now what do you think? You didn't join us before, but now we work together and we would love to have you to join the group. And at that point I said, you know what? Okay, it's a different time. We've worked together. I think this could really work. So I said yes, and that was back in 1999, probably 98. And then I started working with Dream Theater in 1999, and our first album was Scenes from a Memory, which was, to this day, is a pretty important progressive rock concept album.
Right. You always, from that point on, it seemed like more concept-driven, which is, I don't even know if there's anybody doing that. It's kind of like, it was one of the things I loved about Genesis. I went to see Lamb Lies Down on Broadway in Boston and for a couple nights, and I love Peter Gabriel and incredible theatrical kind of stuff, but they were always mythic and archetypal and psychologically more dense than kind of the typical love songs or something that one might get from a pop or rock album.
Right. Yeah, I mean, nowadays, people's attention span is so short that a concept album, I mean, come on, they won't even listen to one tune. But, Dream Theater and some other bands are trying to maintain this idea that we can create a work that people have to, be involved with and dive into to actually get so much out of it. I think it's a really important thing to do, but I think it's becoming less and less these days.
Well, I feel like it's closer to what Wagner always spoke of in terms of the need for art to become a Gesamtkunstwerk, a great work that embraces all the different media, like the opera or something like that. The immersive environment, if you will, is the most creative, potentially transformative space that art and music and things can offer us.
Right.
And but it needs to be welded with a story, and that's how the concept album makes a difference and distinguishes itself from a lot of single tunes and things. There's an arc.
Absolutely, and it's a wonderful space to be in as someone who's a creative person. It's demand. It gets more and more demanding, though, I think, to work that way.
Yes. Well, how do you guys? How do you evolve the themes that will become the album? How did that 99 drop come together?
Well, I think, Dream Theater in itself is just this combination of energies that allow for such a thing. I mean, first of all, you've got guys who are interested in the storyline. Certain people in the group are more about writing text and more about story and concept, and other people in the group are maybe more about musical motifs and how do you develop the musical motifs and what kind of interesting places can we bring these ideas. So I think that it's almost like a lucky synergy of minds that's what Dream Theater has been about. I mean, you know, we have no shortage of epics, even beyond the concept albums. We have these tunes that are, you know, people know Dream. Oh, they're long songs, you know. So we kind of tend to, you know, leave us to our own flow, and next thing you know, we'll have a 15-minute song. So we have to work harder on making these things shorter. So that's kind of how it's not hard for us to make that happen. It's almost hard for us to stop that from happening.
I'm always curious with musicians whether they kind of wake up with music in their heads, and and it's something that is inner driven, or that it comes in the working with the instrument itself. It's just a kind of a playing with the one sound brings on the next, almost spontaneously.
Yeah.
So
I think it's that's an interesting thought, because it's really both. It's really, sometimes there's an energy that's just moving, and like I've got a feeling, a musical idea, and it just drives the music, and I just almost like run to the piano to make it happen, you know. And other times it might be sound driven. I might hear a particular kind of sound, or play a synthesizer that has a tone, and then that leads to the, you know, to what's going to happen. So sounds can, you know, if you're sensitive to sound, it can really inspire, and that happens a lot with a really good synthesizer. I'll put my hand down, and next thing you know, I'm inspired, and things can happen. I could also be it could be the middle of the night. I could wake up and go, wow, I got this, you know, melody in my head, and I just gotta write it down. Or, you know, what's interesting, and I'm sure you'll be able to kind of understand, is that even when you're going through your ordinary life, and you know, you maybe it's even like you're not feeling well, like you could be sick or whatever, but it puts you in an alternate space. It's like, and that can be inspiring too. Like I've written music when I've had a fever. Like it's just like, you know, it's certainly one doesn't want that kind of inspiration, but it does happen where you're influenced by something that's very powerful. And so I could sit down at the piano and be under the influence of some kind of a fever and actually create something that's really inspired.
Wow.
I'm sure you can relate to that from an artistic point of view. Like when does
absolutely.
When do you get in that space to want to start to create something? You know, it's like a color. You say, oh my God, look at this incredible shade of blue. Like I can do such beautiful things with that. Or I wouldn't call myself a visual artist, but what will get me moving and creating in that direction is I'll see something and I go, wow, that almost looks like and I'll kind of influence it. Or maybe it looks like it could be an eye, and I'll put an eye on it. And I go, wow, it really, it'll take me in those spaces.
So some musicians have been visually driven. Like they'll imagine a sequence of things like the Pastoral Symphony and things like that, that their music goes with a thing. I think that concept album is really, in some ways, because it's all aiming the sound toward a particular message,
and that's very inspiring. And I think people who are not necessarily as sonically sensitive, but they can be almost brought into the audio domain because there's a concept around it. It helps people to take that journey into the music. I find it's really helpful, where I could write something like a symphony, and just because it sounds good and it's a bunch of beautiful notes, whatever, but if you have a concept around it, it opens it up to a lot more people. So that's an interesting thing. I noticed that, you know, working with Dream Theater and kind of the way that people are responding. A lot of them respond to the concept almost more than they do the actual music, because it intrigues them, and that's the way their minds work.
Well, Jordan, we so appreciate your being with us today, and first having a little insight into your creative process and some of the evolution that's taken
the
you
steps
to...
that yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me be on your platform here. I really appreciate it. And I'm a big fan of your art, and you're always inspiring me when I open up my social media and I look at pictures and I see one of yours. I go, oh, okay, I know what I'll be doing, and doing my little extra fun stuff.
Well,
so thank you for that.
Thank you for weaving me into your dream, and
awesome.
you've inspired so many of us, and myself very deeply, and so thank you again.
Take care.